because I thought I'd be speaking to the Sunday school, right? I didn't know I was going to be speaking to everyone, so if I would have listened, more to my mother, I would have been better prepared for my message. So I've been on the back pew, kind of remixing my message a little bit to this audience. So I guess you got to bear with me. All right. But in addition, I think also Pastor said, "Little Nathan, come on up." I thought he was talking to me. I was a very little kid. I mean, I'm kind of more normal size now, but I was a very little kid and I grew up in this church, so I thought he was talking to me, but he was talking to the other little Nathan. Right, but then he's doing a good job. Let's give him another round. But I thought it was appropriate that little Nathan came up and danced because I think it's relevant to the point that I want to get across today. And it's about, your divine purpose, because everybody has a divine purpose, and you have to be wise to make the most of your divine purpose. And that's what I want to speak about today, because wasn't he such a great dancer? Clearly, God equipped him with those abilities. That's a rare, a natural talent that he has. But so that's something that I thought was very, coincidental given the message that I prepared. So the last time that I was here was for Mother's Day. I came here on Mother's Day, and Pastor Winchester, his message was on King Solomon and how he prayed for wisdom. And that message really struck with me because I remember listening to that message as a young man in this church and about praying for wisdom. And I remember doing that, the lesson that wisdom is worth more than gold. And that's something that I wanted to further expand upon. As he stated, I went to college at Morehouse College. And Morehouse College, one of the main distinctive things about Morehouse College is that it's the alma mater of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he had a spiritual advisor. His mentor was the president of the college, a man that's less widely known by the name of Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays. But he was a pastor himself. He was the dean of the Howard University School of Divinity, and he was the president of Morehouse College while Dr. King was there. And he has an insightful quote that always sticks with me about your purpose. And what Dr. Mays says is that every man and woman is born in the world to do something distinctive. And if he or she doesn't do it, it may forever go undone. So I want to stick there and speak about every person's purpose, what they're equipped to do. But in order to achieve your purpose, you have to be wise. You have to be wise and not be lazy. So, in order to kind of bring that message home, the importance of not being lazy in the pursuit of your divine purpose, I wanted, since I thought I was going to be speaking to some young kids, to illustrate that with a story, right? And I don't know if you guys, some people are here my age, but some people are older, so y'all should know about Aesop, right? Anybody know about Aesop and his fables? All right. So I remember them growing up. I learned a lot of wise lessons, like the tortoise and the hare from Aesop. So I figured I'd share a story with Aesop with the young people. So young people, if you're in here, listen to me right now. This is for you. It's the story of the trader and the bird from Aesop. So in this particular tale, Aesop shares to us that there was a bird that was approached, recognized, regarded, and even revered for its radiant and rare feathers. And one day he was approached by a trader who pretty much walked up to the bird and said, "Hey man, you got some radiant feathers. And I know there will be a time when you're going to get hungry. So guess what? I have some worms for you. And you know what? If I trade you one of these worms, why don't you just give me one of your beautiful feathers?" And the bird thought to himself, he said, "That sounds like a pretty good deal." And he thought it was a pretty good deal because he didn't have to go fly. He didn't have to go work. All he had to do was exchange one of his feathers, sacrificing a part of himself so that he could meet his appetite without doing any work. So he said, "All right, I'll take that deal." And he gave up one of his feathers, a part of himself, so that he could satisfy his appetite. So that's what happened. And then the next day, for dinner, he thought about, I hope that trader comes along. And guess what? The trader came back along. And he said, "Hey man, I know you enjoyed one of those fat, juicy worms that I gave you. And guess what? I got another worm. So all you have to do is trade me one of your rare, beautiful, and radiant feathers, and I'll give you a worm." And the bird said, "I think I'll do this. I enjoyed that last worm, and I didn't have to work for it. So you know what? I'll give him a feather." And guess what? The bird thought that was a pretty good deal. So he began to expect the trader to come every day. And that's what the trader did. He came every day for breakfast and dinner, exchanging a feather for a worm. And the bird, he eventually began to rely on the trader. He came that day, the next day, and the next day. So, my brothers and sisters, you guys are smart people. You guys pretty much know where the story is going. One day, the bird expected the trader to come, but the trader didn't come. All right? And the bird was like, man, I don't know what to do. Because he had spent all these days relying on the trader. And so he said, I don't want to fly and get me a worm. And then he actually went across and walked across a pond, as Aesop tells it, and saw his image in the pond. And guess what the bird saw? He saw that he was, one, fat. He saw, two, that he was featherless. He was full of worms, and he could not fly. And that was the moral of the story, was that in exchange for a shortcut in terms of food, not wanting to work, the bird was stripped of his divine purpose, of what God allowed him to do. He was stripped of his ability to fly. And essentially, as Aesop tells it, that's the lesson that we can really learn today, because in order to satisfy the bird's craving, in order to satisfy its appetite, to get what it wanted, the bird had to give up a part of itself. And so often, don't we do that? Don't we lose what we're equipped to do in terms of momentary shortcuts? Yeah. Because on top of all of that, the bird was so lazy that he wanted someone else to do for it what it could do for itself. So I want to stop here and emphasize and juxtapose that with something that's in Proverbs. So if you guys have your Bibles or whatever, you can turn to Proverbs 6, I believe verse 6. And God teaches us a lesson about an ant. An ant that's less regarded, that's, a small animal, but the ant was wise. So if you're with me, it's going to be Proverbs 6, chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6. And I'm going to read from the Message translation, because I think it gets the point across a little bit clearer. But I want you to read along with me as I read. Are you guys ready? Yeah. All right. Well, the Message translation says, "You lazy fool, look at an ant. Watch it closely. Let it teach you a thing or two. Nobody has to tell it what to do. All summer, it stores up food. At harvest, it stockpiles provisions. So how long are you going to lazy around and do nothing? How long before you get out of bed? A nap here, a nap there. A day off here, a day off there. Sit back. Take it easy. Do you know what comes next? Just this. You can look forward to a dirt poor life. Poverty will be your permanent house guest." So what? The ant was clearly wise. And why was the ant wise? The ant was wise because, one, it made sure that during the summer months, when it's long days, when it's hot outside, when it's nice outside, he wasn't just thinking about spending all day just having a good time. He was preparing for the winter. That's right. So when the winter came, everybody else is out there searching for food, but the ant, where is he? It's in his nest. He got all the food that it needs. It's stockpiled. My Lord. And the ant is wise. So that's the lesson that I want to learn from that I want you to learn from the ant. The ant is wise because he's not lazy. The ant may not have the abilities of the bird. It may not have all of those beautiful, radiant feathers, but it's wise enough to take what it has and working diligent so that it can achieve its purpose. And that's essentially what I want to tell you guys today, is to be wise like that ant. We all have a purpose, but sometimes when we sit back and we rest on our laurels, think about that young kid Nathan. If Nathan doesn't dance for 5 or 6 years and he try to come up here and try to dance for y'all, it's not going to look as good as it looked today, right? Because that's what he's talking about right here in Proverbs, where he says, a nap here, a nap here, a day off here, a day off there. That's going to eventually have an effect. It's going to have a cumulative effect, your laziness. Laziness can be destructive. You think, oh, I take a day off here. I'm taking a shortcut here. You know, I want to go to the club, or I want to not do my work at school, or I want to go get high. Those shortcuts, you think it doesn't have an impact on your purpose, but eventually that laziness is destructive and it turns you away from your purpose. So I don't know how close, but I'll just say, in my personal experience, that's just been the case as well. You know, I was you can look at my resume or you can look at my biography, and it looks, I hope, somewhat successful, but it's not always as easy as it looks on paper. Right. And, you know, I consider myself, I was an ant growing up, I would imagine. I was pretty much an ant. I worked hard. I knew what I had to do. I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew I wanted to go to law school. So I worked during the summer, you know, so I could be prepared for that winter, right? But sometimes when I got to law school, I kind of thought that, oh, you know, I'm at Berkeley Law School. I done did what I was supposed to do, and I kind of took my foot off the gas a little bit. And that little bit, that day there, that day of laziness there, it has an impact. So I certainly could be a lot further than I am now had I continued that wisdom. If I hadn't necessarily been lazy, I could have been more like that ant and been so much closer to my divine purpose. So that's the lesson that I wanted to bring to you today. Thank you.